Across the ages, certain scriptures have spoken to humanity with a voice that seems to come not only from history, but from eternity itself. The Bhagavad Gita is one such text, revered as a dialogue between Arjuna, the troubled warrior, and Krishna, the divine guide who reveals truths beyond time. For centuries, people have turned to it for moral guidance, spiritual strength, and philosophical clarity. But hidden beneath its verses lies a science of consciousness, a map that unites the insights of yoga with the revelations of modern science. When read carefully, the Gita does not merely speak of devotion or duty. It points to the structure of reality itself, describing inner mechanics of the mind and soul that today we can see reflected in physics, biology, and psychology. The opening scene is a battlefield, filled with armies and weapons, but beneath the literal story it mirrors the human brain. Each warrior represents impulses of thought, each army a network of tendencies. Neuroscience today shows that the brain is a constant dialogue between competing networks: fear against courage, distraction against focus, compassion against aggression. Arjuna, standing in despair, represents human consciousness caught between these forces. Krishna, radiant and calm, symbolizes the deeper intelligence within, the higher self that can integrate and guide the chaos. Long before brain scans and psychological models, the Gita described with poetic precision the inner battlefield that modern science is now beginning to measure. When Krishna declares that the soul cannot be cut, burned, drowned, or destroyed, many hear a promise of immortality. But this is more than poetry. Physics tells us energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only transforms. In the same way, the Atman, the inner self, is not subject to decay, but continues beyond forms. Consciousness, in this view, is not an isolated product of the brain, but a field that expresses itself through it. Just as waves rise and fall upon the ocean without ever exhausting its depths, the self moves through forms of life without ceasing to exist. The law of conservation, spoken in the language of science, echoes the law of the eternal soul spoken in the Gita. The text also emphasizes mastery of the mind. Krishna states that the mind can be both friend and enemy, depending on whether it is disciplined. Psychology today affirms the same truth. Neuroplasticity shows us that thought itself reshapes the brain. Habits of mindfulness, discipline, and compassion reinforce pathways of clarity and resilience, while habits of fear and distraction strengthen circuits of anxiety. When Krishna describes yoga as the stilling of the restless mind, he is not only speaking of mystical practice, but of the exact mechanisms by which awareness reorganizes the nervous system. In modern language, meditation rewires the brain. In the Gita's language, it awakens the self to its true power. If these words resonate with you, take a moment now to connect with the wisdom they carry. Subscribe to this channel, like the video, and in the comments write the affirmation: I am eternal consciousness beyond birth and death. By doing so, you are joining a timeless dialogue between spirit and science, between the voices of the ancients and the discoveries of today. Krishna also instructs Arjuna on moderation, urging him to eat, rest, work, and meditate in balanced measure. At first glance, this seems like moral discipline, but modern biology reveals its deeper truth. Our bodies depend on homeostasis, a delicate balance regulated by rhythms. Circadian cycles govern hormones, sleep restores the brain, balanced nutrition sustains energy, and proper exercise maintains equilibrium. When these rhythms are broken, the nervous system becomes unstable, leading to anxiety, illness, and fatigue. But when we live in balance, our body becomes a vessel for clarity and insight. The Gita recognized this ancient law of rhythm, which science is only now exploring in detail. Another teaching is the use of sound and breath. Krishna speaks of the yogi who, chanting Om at the moment of departure, transcends into higher states. Today, we know that sound vibrations influence brain waves, that controlled breathing activates the vagus nerve, and that resonance can calm the stress response. The syllable Om has a frequency that stimulates neural coherence, synchronizing brain activity, lowering cortisol, and inducing equilibrium. What yogis called liberation through vibration, science now studies as biofeedback, where resonance and breath alter the physiology of stress and awaken states of calm. The Gita's teaching of action without attachment, known as karma yoga, is also reflected in modern psychology. To act fully without clinging to results is to enter a state of deep flow. Studies show that when a person is fully absorbed in action, fear and distraction dissolve, and the brain enters rhythms of coherence. Creativity and excellence emerge naturally. The paradox is striking. Detachment from outcomes produces the highest quality of action. When Krishna instructs Arjuna to act without clinging to fruits, he is describing the psychology of flow long before science gave it a name. Even the cosmic vision that Krishna reveals to Arjuna, where all beings, times, and universes merge into one vast form, resonates with discoveries of physics. Quantum theory describes a unified field underlying all phenomena, where separation is an illusion and all particles are interconnected in a single web. The cosmic form of Krishna is not only a vision of divine grandeur, it is a metaphor of unity that reflects the same truth. That individuality is a wave on the surface of a boundless ocean. To see that vision is to see that all divisions of self and other dissolve into one field of existence. Equanimity is another theme repeated in the Gita. The sage, Krishna says, is steady in joy and sorrow, gain and loss, honor and dishonor. Neuroscience reveals that meditation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which regulates the emotional centers of the brain. As a result, practitioners remain calm in extremes, not through suppression but through mastery. The Gita calls this state sthita prajna, the steady wisdom that cannot be shaken. To understand the Gita in its hidden depth, we must see that it is not a call to blind belief, but to direct perception. Krishna does not ask Arjuna to accept doctrines, he urges him to experience truth through practice. Modern science takes a similar stance. Hypotheses must be tested. Truths must be verifiable. In this way, yoga and science are not enemies, but companions. Where science uses instruments, yoga uses the mind itself as a laboratory. Both reveal patterns. Both demand discipline. Both open gateways into reality. The Gita stands at the bridge between them, reminding us that the inner and outer sciences describe the same cosmos, only from different vantage points. Another overlooked teaching lies in Krishna's words about gunas, the three forces of nature known as sattva, rajas, and tamas. These qualities describe balance, activity, and inertia, and they shape not only behavior, but the very fabric of the universe. Modern physics describes matter as patterns of energy in constant flux, governed by forces of attraction, repulsion, and equilibrium. Psychology describes personality traits that align with these modes: clarity and wisdom reflecting sattva, ambition and restlessness reflecting rajas. lethargy and ignorance reflecting tamas. The Gita presents a model of reality that maps onto modern systems theory, where equilibrium arises from the dynamic play of opposing forces. Recognizing these qualities within oneself is not superstition, but a precise science of energy management. Krishna's instruction to rise above the gunas points to transcendence, to a state of awareness not bound by fluctuations. Neuroscience speaks of meta-awareness, the ability to observe thoughts without being captured by them. Quantum physics speaks of a field beyond polarities, a ground state from which fluctuations arise. The Gita reveals that freedom is not in escaping the world, but in standing beyond its shifting qualities, awake in the center where stillness meets motion. This is the same principle yogis cultivate in meditation, to rest as awareness itself, untouched by the mind's turbulence. Consider also Krishna's words about memory and forgetfulness. He declares that he is the source of both. To the mystic, this means that the divine pervades every experience. To the scientist, memory and forgetfulness are functions of neural encoding, retrieval, and decay. The hippocampus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, all work together to store and release information. Forgetting, once seen as a flaw, is now recognized as essential to learning, pruning unneeded connections to strengthen what is vital. The Gita's vision sees the divine even in forgetting, for without it, no new growth could occur. In this way, Krishna's teaching aligns with the biology of the brain. Both point to a wisdom inherent in the cycles of remembering and letting go. The Gita also speaks of sacrifice, but not merely of rituals with fire and offerings. It speaks of the sacrifice of the senses into self-control, of the ego into the higher self, of ignorance into knowledge. Sacrifice here means transformation, the offering of lower tendencies into higher states. In neuroscience, this is the principle of neuroplasticity, where old patterns are pruned and new circuits are built. Sacrifice is the rewiring of the self, the conscious choice to let go of what limits in order to awaken what liberates. In this light, every act of discipline, every meditation, every breath held in awareness is an act of sacred transformation. Perhaps the most hidden teaching of the Gita is its view of death. Krishna tells Arjuna that death is only the shedding of form, that the soul journeys beyond. Physics, too, reveals that matter is never destroyed, it only changes state. Energy flows from one form into another without ceasing. From the perspective of consciousness, death is not an end, but a passage, a shift in vibration. Studies of near-death experiences, though controversial, hint at continuity of awareness beyond the body. The Gita offers not only comfort but a framework. To live with the awareness that what we truly are cannot die is to live without fear, to act with courage, to love without hesitation. This union of mysticism and science is not an accident. The ancients observed inwardly what we now measure outwardly. They spoke of energies, vibrations, cycles, and unity. We speak of frequencies, rhythms, fields, and networks. Yet the essence is the same. Reality is one, consciousness is vast, and life is a process of awakening into this truth. The Bhagavad Gita is not only scripture, it is a mirror, showing us what we are capable of seeing when both intuition and intellect work together. The hidden teachings of the Gita invite us to practice in a way that transforms both mind and body. To meditate is to regulate neural oscillations. To chant is to entrain the nervous system with resonance. To live in balance is to align with circadian rhythms. To love and surrender is to dissolve egoic contraction and awaken neural circuits of compassion. Each verse, when read through this lens, becomes not a distant philosophy, but a manual of inner science. The battlefield becomes the brain. The warriors become thoughts. Krishna becomes the guiding intelligence, and liberation becomes the awakened state, where awareness shines without distortion.